From the PEP Radio Newsroom, this is the Hourly News Blast. This is part two of a story from Uncloseted Media that we covered last night. According to a 2013 report by Every Child Protected Against Trafficking, law enforcement has little understanding of commercially sexually exploited boys. For example, they believe boys are not pimped and therefore not in need of services. We're led to believe that men are perpetrators and women are victims, says Stephen Procopio, a clinical social worker who works with male survivors. We don't have a national dialogue like women have. There's a lot of gender bias when it comes to trafficking survivors and a great deal of homophobia. People are not looking out for it. Under the current administration, resources have been buried even further underground. The executive order that restricts federally funded websites from using language related to sex or gender forced Polaris to remove references to gender from parts of its website. It hasn't changed anything in how we meet survivors on the hotline or how we train people, Doucette told Uncloseted Media. But it makes people feel even less welcome. It is certainly not a good thing for queer boys looking for help. They don't see themselves listed or represented. I was so ashamed. John Michael Lander, an author and keynote speaker from Ohio, told Uncloseted Media, I thought it was my fault and I didn't know how to come forward. I would wear the same thing every day at school and not shower just to get someone to check on me, but no one did. Lander was groomed and trafficked throughout high school. In 2021 testimony, he says his mentors in the swim world, which included a doctor and a lawyer, reached out and built trust with his mother in an effort to control him. The lawyer would manage the money and pay the diving costs in alignment with the legalities to keep my amateur status. He indicated that he knew other professionals who wanted to help and provide the family with their expertise. These men were leading a trafficking circle, which led to Lander at 14 being exploited into sex for the first time with a 60-year-old man at a motel. I had never had sex with anybody, he says. I was really scared, and I remember I froze. I couldn't move, and it was like I left my body. Every weekend for 4 years, Lander remembers being driven to Columbus, Ohio, and auctioned off with other young teenagers in white Speedos on stage while men walked around the room. They would be sold for the weekend and the men could do what they wanted. Lander says the culture of sports and masculinity made it hard to talk about because people expected him to be tough. It seems hard for the public to understand how a coach or a person in power could sexually abuse a male athlete, Lander says. Many men think that they can handle it and push the experience aside and just get over it. There's toxic masculinity in our culture where if you do express vulnerable feelings as a boy when you're growing up, you're met with hostility or anger from people in your life, says Jonathan Doucette, hotline training and development manager at Polaris. The stigma can just be so large that survivors might feel like they have to take care of this by themselves. I felt so isolated, says Lander. When I finally told my mom what was happening, she looked at me and she slapped me across the face and said, it's not nice to make lies about people. If this person or these people were doing this, you must have caused it. So Lander stayed silent. When boys muster the courage to come forward, they often don't receive the resources they need. Jesse Leon experienced this after he was trafficked from 11 to 14 by a shopkeeper who locked him in the back room of a convenience store and sexually abused him. He eventually brought in other men who were allowed to drug Leon and do whatever they wanted sexually. Sometimes it'd be just somebody who wanted to do oral sex on me. Sometimes it would be more, Leon told Uncloseted Media. The shop owner threatened that if I didn't return, he would find out where I live and kill me and kill my family. He says that messaging about masculinity, especially coming from a Latino household, where machismo culture encourages boys to be tough and take care of their family at all costs, made him go back every day. At 14, Leon was addicted to hard drugs and severely traumatized. After 3 years of being trafficked, he got into a bloody fight at a school because he was seeing the faces of all the men who were abusing him. The school reported it, and the state sent him a therapist for weekly talk therapy, but he needed way much more support. She never once recommended drug and alcohol treatment, even though she knew I was addicted, he says. No one from the state ever followed up. Once I was handed off, they assumed that because I was in therapy, that I was getting the resources I needed, no one checked in with me. And when my mom asked for a translator or a therapist who could speak Spanish, they said no. Leon says that he feels he was overlooked because he was a boy. Males can't be victimized, he said. There's still a belief that males are perpetrators. They're not victims. There's no safe space for men to destigmatize reaching out for help. You deal with it. It happens. You move on. A 2023 report found significant gaps in recognizing and responding to trauma in boys who are experiencing or at risk of sexual exploitation. While many indicators of trafficking are consistent across genders, boys often express trauma through externalizing behavior such as aggression, defiance, anger, or bullying. Responses that are frequently misinterpreted by providers as delinquency or behavioral disorders like ADHD rather than signs of victimization. Law enforcement just doesn't realize that this is happening, says Williams. If we can't help these young boys, they face a lifetime of addiction, prison, or death. Because male survivors often don't self-identify due to stigma, homophobia, and mistrust of authority, Williams says that professionals must be trained to recognize nonverbal cues and build trust over time. Effective training also requires confronting gender bias, challenging the myth that trafficking is only a women's issue, and creating safe, affirming spaces for male victims to disclose. Almost 20 years later, Jose Alfaro, whom we reported about yesterday, is still recovering. He now works full-time in advocacy, centering on spreading awareness on the domestic trafficking of minors and underscoring the importance of increasing resources for marginalized communities and especially queer boys. I did not know what resources were, he says. I didn't really think that there was anything that could help me. I don't want anyone to feel like that ever again. And that concludes this story. If you're watching our news videos on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Up next, we have the Meadville area weather forecast here on PEP Radio.